Whatever way you look at it, this puts more power in Andy Burnham's hands and the hands of those around him. And that is the idea. But look, I would say that this is obviously his vision, but the two are inextricably interlinked. You can't spend money that you don't have. Obviously, you need to balance the books and you need to be responsible with the public finances. And that is one of the issues. His prescription is to remove the growth responsibility elsewhere, but that will all have to broadly be, I imagine, non-fiscal measures of growth. So more devolution, more of that kind of stuff.
Time for our 6:35 briefing on the day's politics, business and sport. Politics first with the Times political reporter Terry Stiastny. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie.
So the Prime Minister's been talking to Patrick Maguire of the Times. He's splitting up the Treasury. Explain the proposal for us.
Yes, the idea is that the Treasury does two different things at the moment, and Andy Burnham would like to separate those out a bit. So one of them is controlling the public finances. That is the bit that he thinks the Treasury should carry on doing. And the other part of the job is driving growth, which is something that Andy Burnham thinks should now be taken control of largely by Number 10 North. This is something that Andy Burnham in his interview was comparing to what Harold Wilson tried to do back in the 1960s with the Department of Economic Affairs, and he clearly thinks that these two things are slightly pulling in different directions at the moment. And it was very interesting also later on in his interview with Patrick Maguire, where he was talking about trying to bring some services back into public control. And so he was saying that he felt that the way this was working at the moment was not good, that it ended up with private companies not investing properly in infrastructure, and making an argument, not really sort of from ideology, but more from in practical terms, saying it actually would cost less money, Andy Burnham believes, to have public control in order to try and invest, to try and get growth going. And this seems to be the direction that he very much wants to go in.
Yeah, we'll hear a little bit more about that from Angela Rayner at 7. The key thing she's going to want to talk to us about is the commitment that Andy Burnham, that he first made when he became Prime Minister, and he gave that speech without notes outside Number 10 Downing Street a month ago now. He said he was going to end rough sleeping. And by Christmas, I mean, this feels very ambitious, Terry.
Yes, this is quite an ambitious target. Andy Burnham is talking not only about money which has already been promised to do that, but saying that he's found more money from within Angela Rayner's department to fund this. He's also going to convene a summit in the autumn to try to get local authorities and other institutions to work together on rough sleeping. I mean, again, this is something that has been attempted temporarily during the pandemic when Louise Casey, who of course has been advising lots of governments on lots of issues, was involved. But it's talking not only about a temporary solution, but also trying to provide more settled homes for people who are currently homeless.
Yeah, well, and actually it's quite an interesting comparison to be made to what could happen in the next 4 months between now and Christmas and what happened in the pandemic, when of course we had this sort of extraordinary political impetus to get people off the streets. Public health safety was so critical, and of course we had all these empty hotels as well, so it's a sort of very different scenario now. We've also learned a little bit about Andy Burnham's expenses in the run-up to being Prime Minister. What was he buying? What was he expensing? It's sort of, if we compare it, not quite in the same league as Sir Keir Starmer.
No, he's looking back, he's declared everything that he's supposed to. Well, we believe he has over, certainly £350,000 over the 4 months before he became Prime Minister. Nearly half of that came from Lord Sainsbury, who's been a frequent Labour donor in the past, and a lot of that went on things like campaign staff, office costs, policy and operations set up, and he's taken various other donations of smaller amounts from people towards those campaigns. But looking a bit further back, when he was still Mayor of Manchester, he has declared things like visits to Glastonbury, for instance, a few hospitality trips and visits particularly to music events. But yeah, no sort of personal items, I guess, on that list. Mostly this has gone to campaign costs and office costs and so forth.
Yeah, and I think he was speaking at Glastonbury, wasn't he?
Yes, various things. He was invited to either to give awards or to make speeches in many of these places.
Yes, when is a work trip not a work not a work trip? I think in that case it was sort of fun and work.
I remember when one of the members of the government, I think it was Jonathan Reynolds, I'll just check that, but Google paid for him to go to Glastonbury. As a part of sort of businessy, networky thing. And Terry, that was harder to argue. I remember asking him about it. That sort of expense is harder to justify now, perhaps.
Yes, maybe it is. I mean, I think, if you're going there to make a speech and obviously somebody is going to offer to pay for your accommodation, I think it probably looks different when you are the Mayor of Manchester to when you are Prime Minister. It's not probably a choice that you would make once you're in the bigger job.
Yeah, and we'll have to be so much more careful now. Terry, thank you. Terry Stiastny, the political reporter, thank you very much.
It was Reynolds, actually. This notion, though, of buying access to people, I think is really bad. I don't think if you're in politics, someone should pay for you to go anywhere. I don't think, this might be very purist, I don't think someone should pay for you to go to the theatre, should go to a football match, anything like that. I just think that just pay your own way. If someone is paying for you to do something, they want something out of you, and your job as a politician is to be above all of that. I think it's really clear cut. Just don't go anywhere as a grace and favour. And then you've got nothing to ever worry about. What they'll say is, we're transparent about it because we admit to it. But just declaring something doesn't obviate the sin. Just because it's there in black and white.
But then you're more aware of the potential of the influence.
That's true, but the influence that exists nonetheless. I just think it's a ridiculous argument. I would say all politicians of any seniority should say, if a company wants to pay for me to do something, I'm saying no.
So if the Mayor of Greater Manchester was going to go to Glastonbury but was going to do work at it...
I think if you're being paid as a speaker... That's not an expense, that's a gig, that's a paid gig, which I think is slightly different. If you're going to a football match and Man City cover the cost of it, then why shouldn't you pay your way? If you're going to go to Glastonbury as a government minister to go and experience Glastonbury, which they do, then pay for it. If you want a cultural experience, pay for it. If you want to go to the theatre, pay for it. There's lots of people getting theatre tickets comped. Why?
Or Taylor Swift tickets, that was the big one, wasn't it?
Why?
Yes.
It doesn't teach you anything. I've never fully understood that. I think if someone is paying for you to go to see Taylor Swift, then they've got something on you.
You may find politicians doing speeches at Taylor Swift gigs.
Well, exactly. If they want to do that,
there'll be a workaround. Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine the reaction from the audience? I would pay for that.
Now, the Prime Minister's been telling the Times how he wants to move power from the London-based Treasury to his new Manchester-based Number 10 North. The Times political editor Steven Swinford is here. Steven, good morning.
Good morning.
He doesn't want us to underestimate his ambitions for Number 10 North, does he, Andy Burnham?
No, I think what's underlying this is actually a sense of irritation. He feels that people are writing off his plans for Number 10 North as a satellite or somewhere that he works when he's in the north of England. And he's actually saying, no, this is much bigger than that. It's a wholesale shift of power. And actually, it's going to take a big tranche of the Treasury's power. So he says the Treasury has traditionally had two potentially conflicting roles. One is to look after the public finances and basically balance the books. And the other is growth. And those two rub against each other. The words he uses, they cloud each other. So he wants, and is making very clear that it is Number 10 North that will be responsible for that.
Yeah, he also says that John Healey, the Chancellor, fully supported the approach, which I guess John Healey has to say that right now. This is a month in, we are to this new partnership. But, it's taking power out of John Healey's hands and arguably putting them back in Andy Burnham's.
Yes, I think that's undeniable. But I imagine that was very much a condition of the job when John Healey took it, this kind of realignment of Number 10, Number 11 relations. But exactly as you say, whatever way you look at it, this puts more power in Andy Burnham's hands and the hands of those around him. And that is the idea. But look, I would say that this is obviously his vision, but the two are inextricably interlinked. You can't spend money that you don't have. Obviously, you need to balance the books and you need to be responsible with the public finances. And that is one of the issues. His prescription is to remove the growth responsibility elsewhere, but that will all have to broadly be, I imagine, non-fiscal measures of growth. So more devolution, more of that kind of stuff, rather than the actual stuff which, if you talk to economists, they would say is needed to get growth going. And that is, you need to put in hard cash to yield results over time. So that's the potential conflict going forward.
One of the things that they will be measured on is an announcement today. We spoke to Angela Rayner at 7 o'clock this morning, is that they would like to end rough sleeping by Christmas, give people a route out of rough sleeping by Christmas. How achievable is an aim like that, Stephen?
It's incredibly challenging. The last time anything close to this was achieved was obviously during the pandemic, when no one was staying in hotels, so lots of rough sleepers were put in hotels for a temporary resolution to it. And the question is, again, he's put an extra £100 million on the table today, now taking over £400 million, this commitment to ending rough sleeping. But some experts are saying it would take a lot more than that. That actually, if you look at Manchester, it has kind of gone back to the levels it was before he became mayor now in 2017. It's a very, very difficult problem to solve. But look, Andy Burnham sees this as a personal issue. He is very invested in it. It was his Steps of Downing Street announcement that he wanted to end rough sleeping, and he is going to use all the levers of power to do it. So I think he is taking rough sleeping probably more seriously than any Prime Minister that I've certainly reported on, and it'd be fascinating to see how he gets on with that.
Yeah, he's basically saying we can't just look at it and say, oh, it's too big of a problem to fix. Let's actually try. Let's move into the Conservatives briefly, Steve. You've been speaking to Claire Coutinho, of course, looking after energy. She's driven the party away from net zero.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't quite hear you then. I was hearing from the control room, forgive me.
You've been speaking to Claire Coutinho. Tell us her plans in terms of moving potentially away from net zero.
So she has got plans to basically make the energy system more dependent on nuclear and more dependent on gas, and to end renewable subsidies from 2033. And the Tories argue that if the government keeps on with net zero 2050, all these hidden costs that you don't hear about in terms of the pylons needed to get the energy from, let's say, wind farms in the east of England or in Scotland down to here, all these extra costs end up adding up. And they reckon that they could save £500 off bills by having a system that is kind of still heavily reliant on renewables, 80%, but not going the whole hog. They argue that squeezing that last bit is too expensive and unnecessary. The government rejects that outright. She's also got a really interesting personal story. So I've done an interview with her. I did an interview with her a couple of years ago where just before the birth, in the wake of the birth of her son, Raphael, and she and her son nearly died. She had a very rare life-threatening condition, which basically, so he nearly died on birth, and then she nearly died, and they eventually identified what it was, and she's okay now, her son's fine, and she's having another baby, which was obviously very good news for her. They're having another son. Everything's gone relatively well so far, and she'd actually made a bit of parliamentary history. She'd stood in for Kemi Badenoch at Prime Minister's Questions and become the first stand-in or anyone to participate in Prime Minister's Questions who has been pregnant at the time of doing so. So she's obviously, that was part of the interview that we did with her.
Yeah, and we wish her well as she gives birth imminently as well. Steve, thank you. Steven Swinford, the political editor of The Times.
I love a bit of personal tales. Nothing wrong with that, is it? I mean, these people are human. It's good to know a bit of a backstory occasionally, isn't it?
Absolutely. But make them feel more human.
Yeah.